What things do Americans do that people from other countries find extremely weird or strange? My neighbor is Russian and she told me she was sad that we don't ask people over to have tea and talk. She asked me over one day and it was really nice. Advertisements for pharmaceutical drugs. Simultaneously being extremely prudish and sexualized. Tie healthcare to employment. Large gaps above, below, and between the bathroom stalls. Donate money to the political career of billionaires. Please donate to my re-election. You're worth 2.5B and I'm trying to save 0.30 on groceries. Donate to it yourself, fuckface. Taxes being added at the checkout. I understand the logic behind why that happens, but at the same time it seems to be the sort of thing that could be fixed quite easily if the powers that be wanted it to be fixed. Eat in our cars. Driving or just sitting in the car eating. Several European visitors have commented on this, so it must be very strange to them. I'm American and worked closely with folks from England for a while. The biggest difference was they thought Americans way overshare. When we were discussing self-image once, another American mentioned she'd had an ED when she was younger. That was it, no other details. I thought nothing of it. When she wasn't around, they told me how uncomfortable it made them and they were shocked at how personal that was. I was floored. They should hear my friend groups talk about GYN visits. LOL. Why do you take my credit card at restaurants here in Canada? The machine gets brought to the table to pay. You have to file your tax. To do that you need to use a private service that costs a lot of money. Have the IRS make a free, easy-to-use service available for the general public. What are we, commies? In Denmark, the tax authority calculates most of it, and you only have to go check that everything is correct. I spend maybe 2 hours in a year on taxes. Also, the US is, as far as I know, the only country in the world that expects its citizens abroad to file and pay taxes. I know you can file manually. It seems this is not a good idea. Become a pilot and buy a plane. Easy access to personal aviation. There really is no other country like the US when it comes to that. While it's not cheap, it's cheaper than anywhere else in the world and the government doesn't gatekeep it into the ground. Unpaid maternity leave. It always fascinates me how cultural norms differ across the globe. I often find it strange to see how large American portion sizes are or how openly friendly strangers can be. This will be a BuzzFeed article tomorrow. Leave newborn babies in daycare all day and go back to working full-time a few weeks after giving birth. Flags on lawns, flags everywhere. Coffee drinks large enough to caffeinate a herd of elephants. With enough sugar to trigger a diabetic coma, all on the way to work. Mandatory tipping culture. Edit expected tipping culture is a more suitable wording. Ridiculously huge elaborate football stadiums for schools and colleges in areas that are otherwise obviously economically depressed. I once read that 8 of the 10 biggest stadiums in the world are at US colleges, universities. Make their government a reality TV show. Caring about school sports. In Europe, nobody cares about some high school basket players. GoFundMe for basic healthcare costs. Why do your kitchen sinks have that terrifying swirling thing that eats fingers? The evocation of God in politics always seems bizarre to me, especially when the separation of church and state is enshrined in the Constitution. I'll hear a US politician talking about the economy or some such serious thing, and then suddenly they're talking about what God wants them to do. Edit. Thank you for the replies explaining my error about what the separation of church and state was intended to do. I've learned something today. Edit 2. Further reading tells me that this may be a contentious point. So now I've learned 2 things. Forcing you to use vacation days when you're ill. Some countries make employers change paid vacation days to paid sick days when you're ill on vacation. As an American who has traveled around Asia, they find it weird that we're always throwing huge high school parties in Hollywood suburbs. The Pledge of Allegiance. The ads for medication. It's weird. Those corporations are so desperate for money they're willing to sell any meds even if people don't actually need them. Leave that shit to doctors. From what I've heard from folks from out of country small talk. Apparently it's not really normal in other places for strangers to just say hi to each other or engage in small talk while doing things like standing in line, after accidentally bumping into each other at the store, noticing that someone is interested in the same thing you are, things like that. Apparently a lot of people compare Americans to golden retrievers and say they're ridiculously friendly because Americans will to anyone, without any formal introduction. Having a gap in bathroom stalls for absolutely no reason. Wearing someone else's traditional clothing or trying out someone else's culture incites some conversation around cultural appropriation and lots of apprehension. Is it offensive if I come dressed to an Indian wedding in a sari? No, of course it isn't. You're most welcome. Circumcision. Go bankrupt paying medical bills. Fucking insanity. Talking. I took my extended family on a trip to New York. They are Malaysian and it shocked them that I had multiple 30-40 minute conversations with people I had never met. Tipping is a big one. How patriotic you guys are when we go watch a football match, the players sign their anthem and that's it. When I went to this baseball game, they had a special guest to sing the national anthem, flags everywhere, jets, kneeling for the army, etc. etc. Thanking cops and soldiers for their service. Very nervous and unwilling to go to the hospital. Go into debt for a chest X-ray. Pay for emergency hospital care. It's extremely weird and strange. Millimeter DDYY. It's the least useful date format ever. I'm Irish, and my husband is German. Half the population seems to hate any politician who wants to improve their life, while simultaneously adoring outright crooks who want to take everything from them. The other half is too busy arguing amongst themselves to notice they're getting their trousers pulled down. Oh wait. We do that too. Go bankrupt from mundane medical care. Getting served plastic plates in a cafeteria. She asked for porcelain plates and was looked at like she was crazy. I have never seen any place serve one-use plastic dishes in Germany. When she explained that we use dishwashers to clean the used dishes in cafeterias, the clerk was like, huh, that doesn't sound like a bad idea. In general, the amount of plastics used in the USA is just so crazy to me. Not including the tax on the displayed price of an item. Just let me know what I need to pay without the mental gymnastics. Literally every other nation has figured out how to do this. Giving guests a tour of their house, WTF. I don't care what your bedroom looks like. I always find the sentence "the likelihood to die in a school shooting is ridiculously low" very irritating. It shouldn't be low. It should be non-existent. Feet, pounds, Fahrenheit, etc. WTF mate. Accept the major issues in the country, rather than fixing them, yet still tell everyone it's the greatest country in the world. Healthcare prices, mass shootings in particular. Edit to add underpaid workers tipping culture. Just get the employers to actually pay a living wage. Also stop having fossils represent you in government. Aluminum. So much ice in water. I live in Alaska, not from America. I don't need ice water. You'll seem to think everybody in the US is walking around with a gun on our hip and a rifle slung across our backs. Have you ever been here? 999 out of 1,000 people aren't armed at any given point, and of the ones that are, most of them carry in a way that you can't even see. Just because there are famously more guns here than people doesn't mean that they're all distributed evenly across the population and that we all carry them around all the time. Take no action against people shooting schools, especially the preschools, then say that they are doing everything they can to protect them. Not have universal healthcare or much leave or vacation, but do have a whole lot of guns. My husband would say that people in the US don't show sufficient respect to their parents. My dad said the same thing. When he first moved to the US to go to college, he was shocked that everyone hated their parents. Use excessive means to get into debt. Afterpay, Klarna, credit cards for every store retailer, payment plans, etc. In some other countries, if you don't have the money up front in full, then you can't afford it. I didn't realize how many people in America have things on monthly payment plans. When I first got here, I was absolutely shocked with how expensive healthcare was. I've never been so afraid of losing everything over a minor surgery. Smiling at strangers. People think this is so weird, but I wouldn't have it any other way. They ask this question on Reddit every 20 minutes. That's pretty fucking weird. Circumcisions at birth. Parents can consent to their underage child being kidnapped. Troubled teen industry. What the actual fuck? Also very little oversight when it comes to homeschooling, medical bills, lack of gun control despite raging gun violence, lack regulation regarding food additives. And this weird tendency to respond to criticism of the US by saying you have freedom, as if the US were at the forefront of that and no other country had it. Sexual sensual arousal to firearms. It might not appear that way to Americans, but to outsiders like Australians we view Americans' obsession with guns a bit fetishistic. Try to use their home currency when traveling in other countries and then becoming offended when they're not only told that their money cannot be accepted, but it is in fact foreign currency. I've literally heard an outraged voice shouting, "I'm not foreign, I'm American," at the person behind a cash register in 2 separate European countries. I once heard when I lived in Europe that Americans always lean on something. I catch myself leaning on things all the time now and think about it immediately. In California, we say no, thank you. My British hosts were actually offended by it. I think in all of Europe, host families, no matter how modest their living situation may be, wish only to lavish their guests with only the best life has to offer, so I highly recommend that you accept all offers graciously. Treating politicians like rock stars and campaign rallies like rock concerts. Also getting dewy-eyed and hand-on-hearty when the national anthem plays. The association of nudity with sexuality, living in such fear that you carry a weapon into a restaurant, church, theater, etc. Associate healthcare with employment. Get angry when you mention healthcare or school shootings. And not for the reason other people get angry at those